welcome to another great edition of Mississippi Stories. I am your host, Marshall Ramsey, editor-at-large and editorial cartoonist right here for Mississippi Today. Got a great episode lined up, and this one's a little personal for me, and I do apologize up front a little bit because I do have a little bit of part in today's interview. So we're interviewing Nash Nunnery today, and Nash is the guy sitting right next to me. Okay, so Nash has come out with this excellent new book. It's called Magnolia Gridiron Cathedrals, and he was on my panel at the Mississippi Book Festival. But also, too, I have a small part in the book. That this is a fantastic new book. It's about Mississippi's historic and unique high school football fields all around the state. And Nash contacted me and asked if I would draw and paint all 47 of them that are in the book, and I did do that. So I do have a part in the book a little bit, but this is your book, and you have done a fantastic job with it, Nash. Thank you for coming in. It's good to be able to hang out with you again.
It's great to be here, Marshall. Thanks for having me. As I told you before we started taping, we were starting to do a lot of this together.
Yeah, and the book has done really well. Congratulations.
Thanks so much.
You know, you've had already a few signings, and they've done really well. And like I said, it's a great book just because coming up on Christmas and so forth. But it's also too, and one thing I truly believe about high school football stadiums, and the reason why I said yes to this project is that I think that high school football stadiums are the soul. You know, if maybe the courthouse is the heart of every community, then the football stadium's its soul. It's the one place where everybody in the whole community can come together. Doesn't matter if you're white, black, rich, poor, doesn't matter what the deal is. You're going to be at probably Friday night, you're going to be there cheering on your team. And so these football stadiums they're kind of like memory keepers for so many people. And so I thought it was a great project, and I thought it was a great book, but you just went above and beyond with the writing. Tell me a little bit about your interest in this and how it kind of got started.
Marshall, I got interested. I've always been interested in old nostalgic type sporting venues, whether it be Fenway Park in baseball or old Boston Garden arenas and things of that nature. Also, I have enjoyed going around to different parts of the state, get into a new town, and I always wonder, what does the high school football field look like? I guess you call me a field nerd, and so I've had that kind of interest in them. In 2020, during COVID, I actually found my senior high school journal that I kept. I was the sports editor of the Clinton High School newspaper, The Target, and my instructor insisted that I keep a daily journal, which I did, about practices and school activities and games before and after and that sort of thing. Found it and seen in the journal that had vivid descriptions of some of the fields that I played on in Brandon and Pearl and McGee and Mendenhall, and my own field, Roy Burkett Field in Clinton. And it just hit me. I said, this is a great idea for a book. Just tell the stories of these fields.
Yeah. I love one. Of course, you played football for Clinton, and you said you're the only person that's ever written a story about your own team.
Well, I think I'm the only sports writer in the history of journalism that covered his own team. So, not that I was biased or anything.
No, I'm about to say, if you get too far outside of the boundaries there, you've probably been doing extra laps at practice, so you have to be really careful about what you wrote.
It was a little awkward interviewing your own coach after you step out of the shower to get dressed to go home. But it was a great experience and really got me interested in writing.
Yeah, you've been a sports freelance writer for many different publications around this area for a long time, and so the writing part probably wasn't really hard. But how did you decide what stadiums to pick and how to structure this?
I really, of course, I saw a lot of them in my travels. I did outside sales for a couple of years within the state of Mississippi, and again, I would travel and go to a town. I've got to find the high school football field.
Yeah.
And so I knew a lot about them, but I wanted to go one step beyond. So I contacted high school football coaches, past and present, that I knew, former players around the state, actually, and media members as well, to give me some idea. The criterion that I had was the field should be at least 50 years old, and or have some historical or unique quirk or perspective about it. And that was kind of the criterion I used for the 47 field.
There's one statement, I can't remember which one it is, where they literally, there was like a super fan, and he passed away, And when they redid the field, they put his ashes, and I guess they buried it in the field.
They did.
That's a great story.
This was in Pascagoula at War Memorial Stadium, which dates back, that place seats about 9,000 people now, and but it goes back to the late 30s, early 40s. And the superfan's name is Walter Thornton. And Walter kept stats for the Pascagoula football team for years and years and years. He was, everybody called him a superfan. Super Panther, Mr. Panther, in other words. And one of his requests was, when he died, that his ashes be sprinkled on the field. Well, it just so happens that Walter died during the transition from natural grass field to artificial playing surface.
Yeah.
And so when Walter died, his ashes, before they laid the top layer of the actual artificial grass, they sprinkled Walter's ashes, so his ashes lay just under the turf itself.
Very cool. There's a lot of great stories like that in here, like stadiums that are named not necessarily after people who are the coach or whatever and so forth. Tell us a little bit about that, because it's kind of cool how some of the namings happen.
Well, I've got two examples from Southwest Mississippi. One, Centerville Academy. Centerville, if you don't know, is a small community almost about 8 miles from the Louisiana line in a mid-county. And the field there has no name. Since it was built in 1970, and the people in Centerville call it the field. So it has no name. In fact, Centerville, the football coach there is Bill Hurst, who is the winningest high school football coach in the state of Mississippi. And I think Bill is in his 47th season this year.
Oh, wow.
And I always wondered, I don't think Bill wanted to name the field named after him.
Yeah.
So the folks there just get a big kick out of calling it the field. So it has no name. The second example would be in Franklin County, in Meadville, Franklin County High School. The field there is named Louis Mullins Memorial Stadium. And the gentleman there is not a football coach. He was not a former player or superintendent. Louis Mullins was the school custodian for about 35 years at Franklin County, and he was a very beloved figure. And you can imagine having a football stadium named after, it's not a player or a coach. And that kind of gives you an example of what the folks in Franklin County thought of Louis Mullins.
Well, it was important too. And as a former high school custodian, I know for a fact that they'll never name the stadium after me, because I was only there for 1 year. So it's just not going to happen. But it's a huge honor. I love some of the backstories of some of the fields. Like I said, you said over 50 years old, and you think, well, I can't believe there's football stadiums that old. What's the oldest one? Because like I said, I was kind of stunned when I found out.
Out of the 47 fields that I've been able to document, we have 3 that are at least a century old, over 100 years. Those 3 would be Philadelphia High School's Harpole Stadium.
Yeah.
It's celebrating its 103rd season this year.
I've seen a lot of historic football now.
A lot of history at that field. And of course, it's the home of the great Marcus Dupree,
That's right.
who we all know about his story. The second field is down in Forest County, at Forest County Agricultural High School in the small, not town, but community of Brooklyn, Mississippi. And it's 102 this year.
Yeah.
However, the oldest venue for one of my fields is Joe Ballsy Field at St. Aloysius Catholic High School in Vicksburg. It goes back to to 1890 is what they told me. The bleachers were added in 1912 when St. Al started playing football,
Yeah.
but it has been a sporting venue in the Vicksburg area since 1890.
That's incredible.
It really is.
It really is. And I love the fact that every time you post one of the pictures or one of the stories and everything, it just opens up these great conversations for people that it literally opens like a key that unlocks memories.
Well, funny you ask, because today on my Facebook memories, we were in Philadelphia at Harpole Stadium a year ago today.
Yeah.
My wife Vicki and I, who did a great job with the photographs in the book, it showed us interviewing 4 Philadelphia Tornado legends that played at Harpole Stadium. I mean, they all come from different generations, and we sat there 2 hours, but I could have talked to those guys for all day long, just hearing their stories about Marcus Dupree and when they played in the 50s and the 40s, and just great memories popped up today.
Yeah, it's like a football stadium is almost kind of like a river in a way, just the students flow through it. But I mean, like I said, there was one, and I forgot where it was, but I mean, you posted it, and there was like, oh yeah, I remember sitting there and I was in band in 1970, and it's just great because like I said though, that football stadiums bring everybody together. Laurel Stadium. And every time I talk to you, that's one of my favorites. I just love that story. And number one, that that there was a benefactor, but also how they built that thing too.
Oh, well, of course, you're talking about Between the Bricks,
Yes.
Watkins Stadium in Laurel, Mississippi. And it is, I call it one of the grand dames, if you will, of Mississippi high school football stadiums. It is made of all brick. That's hence the name, Between the Bricks. It actually goes back to the late 1920s. And it was, the idea came from Buck Cameron, who is actually a member of the Mississippi Sports Hall of Fame as a coach. His son, Mac, who is still alive and who I interviewed for the Laurel section of the book, they are the first father-son duo to go into the Mississippi Sports Hall of Fame. But Mac told me the story about a timber magnate in Laurel, came by practice one day, and he told Coach Cameron that they needed a new field. And he said, I'm going to find you one. So he drove all over Laurel looking at different sites, and he came upon this one in the Homewood subdivision of Laurel.
Yeah.
It was in a ravine, and he said, that's the place. So he drove by practice again and said, I found your field. Fast forward a few years, they used mule power and different things to clear out the ravine and bring in the bricks, and it's just a beautiful venue. If you've never been, in fact, last summer was my first trip. I can't believe I had not seen a game at Watkins Stadium. But in fact, on a historical note, the field is actually the first field, one of the first in the Southeast, college or high school, to have electric lights.
When did they put those in?
1930.
Wow.
1930, they got electric lights. And Coach Buck Cameron said, we can't play in the afternoons because most of the mamas and daddies work, and we want them to have a chance to see their kids play. So we got lights, and so they were actually the first high school to have lights, and the first college as well. Ole Miss and State and Southern didn't get lights, a lot of them, until the 80s.
Yeah, I could only imagine being in that red brick stadium in the afternoon in full sunshine. That would be like being in a kiln. It'd be very hot.
I'm sure it was very uncomfortable for their opponents as well.
Yeah, as well. Were there any stories that really surprised you?
Of course, the Louis Mullins story about him being a custodian and so beloved in Franklin County. Oh gosh, there are so many stories out there. The story about Henley Field, which I mentioned earlier, it's 102 this year.
Yeah.
Of course, Forest County is one of the only agricultural high schools left in the state.
Yeah.
And of course, the students there take care of livestock, they have horses, and it's surrounded by these lush pastures. I think you probably remember, you painted the palatial pond that's like a touchdown pass away from the field itself in the end zone. Just a beautiful setting for high school football.
One of the things I think you and I touched base in January to start on it, and then I procrastinated, and then I had like 47 of them in 2 months. So it was a pretty rapid process.
You did a yeoman job getting those.
Well, I got it done, but here was the thing. I was really worried that it's kind of like eating cheesecake. After about the 7th piece, it starts tasting like soap. And so I was thinking, well, how many times can I do a football stadium that would be different? But I mean, it was literally like every one of them had a different soul. It was just really fascinating. I think Pelahatchie's with the tradition and the young student riding on the horse and so forth. I thought that was really cool too.
In fact, I got a message from that young student's grandfather yesterday that he found out that his granddaughter was, you included her as part of your painting in the story of Chief Stadium in Pelahatchie, and he wanted several copies.
So she's going to definitely, she's going to probably want to print too. That's really
absolutely
cool. One of the things I enjoy about you break it into just basically regions
Yes.
and so forth. Yeah, like this would be Meridian Ray Stadium, and which I think, I mean, when first time I went there for a Madison Central football game over there, and I was just amazed. It looks like a little college stadium.
It is actually has the largest seating capacity in the state for a high school football field, 15,000.
And one of the most famous people ever sleeping in that stadium.
Well, as you mentioned, Ray Stadium has been home to rodeos, music festivals, all types of pro wrestling. It's not just used in the community as a high school football stadium. And one of the stories that Coleman Warner, who is the executive director of the Arts and Entertainment Center over in Meridian, told me, he lives across the street and grew up across from Ray Stadium. In the mid-50s, around 1955, there was a young musical artist that was playing like an opening act for a music festival in Ray Stadium, and didn't have a dime to his name. I mean, even after he apparently got paid, he didn't have enough money for a hotel room. So he asked, could I spend the night in Ray Stadium? They said, sure, just grab a bench on the field and you sleep under a bench. Well, that young performer name happened to be Elvis Presley.
They ought to have a big plaque somewhere on that. You know.
Elvis slept here.
Elvis slept here on that as well. Tell us a little bit about how people can get the book.
Well, the book is available at several bookstores in our state right now. Lemuria Books in Jackson, Lorelei Books in Vicksburg, Pass Books in Pass Christian, Friendly City Books in Columbus, and we are still efforting, trying to work details on book signings at Square Books in Oxford, as well as Bookmart in Starkville and Gumtree in Tupelo.
I love your answer when people say, why didn't you put my stadium in here? You're like,
well,
buy a book and then we'll do a book.
The editor, in fact, asked me to write an author's note in the front to explain to people how these stadiums were selected, and people ask me, what's your favorite of the 47 fields? I said, I have no favorite. 47, they're like my children. There is no favorite. I love them all, and they all have their own personality and their own special characteristics that make them special.
How can folks find you? Website?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
We are on, if they contact me on Facebook, have an open Facebook page, Nash, N-A-S-H, Nunnery, N-U-N-N-E-R-Y. Message me, I'll ship you a book, get it out to you. And we have, I've listed several book signings for September that we have coming up, and look on, in fact, I posted them today, so look on there and find a book signing around the state.
I think the greatest part about the book, I mean, obviously it's, I've enjoyed the stories and everything else. I just love the process and the fact that it just gave something really great for you and your wife to be able to do during the pandemic and get to go travel around the state of Mississippi, which in a way turned out to be as big a reward as anything.
It acted as our vacation in 2022, that's for sure. It was a lot of fun. We traveled, I think I told you, 3,626 miles. She took, and my friend Fred Rayner also took photos, about 20% of the photos. We had 1,500 photos to choose from.
Did you have to climb over any fences?
Yes, a couple of times we did have to climb over fences, but we won't.
Statute of limitations isn't done on that, so I don't want to.
No, we don't want to go there. But it had 94 interviews for the book. Just a great experience for both of us. Not just touring the fields, but a lot of these small communities, the food, the people, the towns. I mean, it was fantastic.
Yeah, I always tell people you can't understand Mississippi just driving from your house to your office.
No, you can't. You have to go there and get out of your car and experience it.
Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
It was just a joy to write this book, Marshall. It was a lot of fun. Again, it's not something I had planned. All over the years, I'm gonna write a book about iconic high school football fields in the state. An old journal that I wrote during my senior year of high school just gave me a spark, and that's where it came from. And
you never know.
You just never know.
You never know. Hey, thank you again too for letting me be a part of it. It was fun to get to create those pieces of art.
Well, it was a pleasure. We were so fortunate to have you on board, Marshall, and you added so much art and depth to the book, and we really appreciate you joining the team and
That's
being
fun.
a part
It
of
really was. So, Hey, thank you for watching today. Another great edition of Mississippi Stories. And if you want to see any past episodes, guess what? You can go to MississippiToday.org or, well, go to MississippiToday.org because you get to see great journalism. You get to see a few bad or medium cartoons. Oh, wait, no, they're all great too as well. But I really appreciate you watching, and we'll be back again next week with another edition of Mississippi Stories right here. Thank you for watching this episode of Mississippi Stories. Make sure to subscribe to the Mississippi Today YouTube channel and click the bell to be notified every time a new video uploads.